Far above the stars, in a space station bigger than Earth's moon, the Galactic Council was having their weekly meeting. The station floated in empty space between galaxies, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. Inside the main hall, beings from across the universe sat around a massive table that seemed to be made of frozen starlight. The Zephyrians looked like tall glass, sculptures filled with moving lights. Their bodies were clear and smooth, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They had built cities that floated inside colorful gas clouds, powered by the energy of baby stars. Their technology was so advanced that they could create matter from pure thought. Next to them sat the Korathi Empire representatives. These beings looked somewhat like humans, but their skin was dark purple and covered in patterns that moved like living tattoos. They wore armor that seemed to be made of folded space itself, shimmering and bending light around it. The Korathi had learned to step between dimensions as easily as walking through a door. They had conquered thousands of worlds not by force but by simply appearing wherever they wanted to be. At the far end of the table, the ancient Veilter flickered in and out of sight. They had given up their physical bodies millions of years ago and now existed as pure energy. When they communicated, it was through flashes of colored light that somehow carried meaning directly into the minds of others. They were so old that they remembered when the first stars were born. Today, they were discussing a small blue planet in a quiet corner of a spiral galaxy. The planet was called Earth, and it was home to a species that called themselves humans. The monitoring report from Sector 7739 is ready, announced a Zephyrian scientist, her crystal body pulsing with soft yellow light. The species designation human continues to show the same destructive patterns we have observed for the past 5,000 of their years. The report appeared in the air above the table, showing images of Earth. There were pictures of green forests and blue oceans, but also of gray cities and brown clouds of pollution. The council members watched as the images showed humans doing what they always did, fighting, building, destroying, and starting over again. "Look at them," said a Korathi general, his purple face twisted in disgust. "They've had fire for 50,000 years, and what have they done with it? They burn their own forests. They poison their own air. They make weapons to kill their own kind." The images changed to show human wars. Soldiers with metal weapons fighting in muddy fields, giant metal birds dropping explosive eggs on cities, mushroom clouds rising over empty lands where cities used to be. "They discovered atomic energy 60 Earth years ago," continued the general. "Most species use such power to reach the stars. These humans made bombs with it. They built enough weapons to destroy their own planet 10 times over." A Veilter entity pulsed with red light, which the others understood as amusement. "They are children playing with fire," the light message said. "They will burn themselves out soon enough. It always happens this way." The Zephyrian scientist nodded sadly. "Our computer models show a 97% chance that human civilization will collapse within the next 200 Earth years. Climate destruction, resource depletion, nuclear war, or biological weapons, something will finish them. They are following the exact same path as the Krathan, the Yulmari, and the Neskrit Collective, all dead now." "But should we not try to help them?" asked a young Korathi observer. This was her first time at a council meeting, and she had been watching the humans with curiosity rather than disgust. "They show creativity, they make art and music. They care for their young, some of them even try to protect their planet." The older council members made sounds that might have been laughter if they had been human. The Korathi general's patterns flashed bright orange, which meant he was annoyed. "Help them?" he said. "Child, we have been watching species rise and fall for millions of years. The ones that survive do so because they learn to control themselves. The ones that don't destroy themselves. It is natural selection on a galactic scale." "The humans had their chance," added a Zephyrian elder, her light dimming to show her age. "We have been watching them since they learned to make fire. They have had countless opportunities to choose cooperation over conflict, wisdom over greed, unity over division. Each time they choose the path that leads to destruction. The young Karathi observer looked at the images still floating above the table. She saw human children playing in parks. She saw humans rescuing animals from burning buildings. She saw humans sharing food with strangers during disasters. But look, she said, pointing to these scenes, they do show kindness. They do help each other. Perhaps they just need guidance. The Veilter entity pulsed with deep purple light, which carried a feeling of ancient sadness. We learned long ago that a species cannot be saved from itself. Wisdom must come from within, or it is not truly wisdom. If we give them advanced technology without wisdom, they will only find new ways to destroy themselves. Remember the Zalkani, said the Korathi general. The council gave them fusion power and faster-than-light travel when they were at the same stage as these humans. Within 50 years, they had turned both gifts into weapons and wiped out their entire species in a war. That lasted only 6 hours. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered the Zalkani. They had been so promising, so eager to learn. The council had broken their own rules to help them. The result was a solar system full of radioactive dust where a beautiful civilization had once thrived. The Prime Directive exists for good reason, said the Zephyrian elder. We do not interfere with developing species. If they are wise enough to survive and grow, they will find their own way to the stars. If not, then they were never meant to join us. The young Karathi observer wanted to argue more, but she could see that the decision had been made long ago. This was not really a discussion. It was just another routine report on a species that the council had already written off as doomed. What is the current status of their technology? Asked a Veilter entity, its light pulsing with boredom. Primitive, replied the Zephyrian scientist. They have barely managed to send a few of their kind to their own moon. Their fastest ships would take tens of thousands of years to reach even the nearest star. They still burn fossil fuels for energy and use crude chemical rockets for space travel. Their computers are electronic devices the size of small buildings, with less processing power than a Zephyrian child's learning toy. And their society, asked the Karathi general, fragmented into nearly 200 separate nations, the scientist continued. They fight constantly over resources, territory, and ideological differences. They have 3 major conflicts happening right now, and dozens of smaller ones. Their economic systems are based on artificial scarcity and competition rather than cooperation and abundance. The council members exchanged looks or flashes of light. In the case of the Veilter, that clearly said they had heard all this before about countless other species. Very well, said the Korathi general. We will continue routine monitoring, but no intervention. Let them follow their natural course. Agreed, said the Zephyrian elder. The Veilter entities pulsed with white light, which meant consent. The young Korathi observer said nothing, but she kept watching the images of Earth floating above the table. Something about the humans bothered her, though she could not put her finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way they kept trying, even when everything seemed hopeless. Maybe it was how they could be so cruel and so kind at the same time. Or maybe it was simply that they reminded her of her own species, long ago, when the Korathi were still learning to walk between the stars. The meeting moved on to other topics, trade disputes between the Andorian clusters, a request for assistance from a dying civilization in the Magellanic Clouds, and reports of strange energy readings from the galactic core. The humans were forgotten, filed away as just another entry in the vast database of species that the council was watching slowly destroy themselves. None of them noticed the small error in their monitoring equipment, a glitch that would hide humanity's next steps from their watching eyes. 200 Earth years had passed since the Galactic Council's last meeting about humanity. The young Korathi observer was now an elder herself, her purple skin marked with the silver patterns that showed her age and wisdom. She had become the head of the observation department, responsible for monitoring dozens of developing species across the galaxy. Today, She sat in her office reviewing routine reports when something caught her attention. The weekly data from Earth Monitoring Station seemed wrong. She pulled up the numbers on her holographic display and frowned. "Computer, show me the radio emissions from Earth over the past 50 years, she commanded. A three-dimensional graph appeared in the air before her. For most of human history, the line had grown steadily upward as humans used more and more radio waves for communication. Television signals, radio broadcasts, military communications, and digital data had created a growing cloud of electromagnetic noise around Earth, but the graph showed something impossible. For the past 30 years, the radio emissions had been decreasing, not slowly, but dramatically. Earth was getting quieter. This cannot be right, she muttered. "Show me satellite emissions." Another graph appeared. The same downward trend. For decades, humans had been launching more and more satellites, communication relays, weather monitors, navigation systems, spy satellites. The orbital space around Earth had become crowded with human technology. But according to the data, most of those satellites had gone silent. "Show me industrial electromagnetic signatures." The third graph was even more disturbing. The steady hum of human industry, power plants, factories, cities full of electronic devices had been fading for decades. It was as if human civilization was slowly shutting down. The Karathi elder felt a chill run through her body. She had seen this pattern before, but only when species were dying out. When civilizations collapsed, when wars destroyed everything, when plagues killed most of the population, that was when worlds went quiet like this. "Computer, connect me to Earth Monitoring Station Alpha 7. A hologram of a floating research station appeared above her desk. The station was staffed by robotic probes that had been watching Earth for thousands of years, hidden in the asteroid belt where humans could not detect them. "Report on human civilization status," she ordered. The main probe's voice was calm and electronic. "Human population appears stable at approximately 8 billion individuals. No signs of major wars, plagues, or natural disasters. However, electromagnetic emissions have decreased by 73% over the past 30 years. "That makes no sense," the elder said. "How can their population be stable while their technology signatures are disappearing?" "Unknown. Visual observation shows continued industrial activity on the surface. Cities appear inhabited and functional. However, most human communication has shifted to quantum entanglement networks and gravitational wave transmissions that our equipment cannot monitor." The elder's silver patterns began to glow brighter, a sign of deep concern. "Quantum entanglement networks? Gravitational wave transmissions? The humans were barely reaching their own moon last time we checked. How could they have developed such advanced communication systems?" "Unknown. Additionally, there has been unusual activity in the outer solar system." "What kind of activity?" "Large structures have been constructed at the edge of human space. Massive shipbuilding facilities around Jupiter and Saturn. The structures are approximately 50 kilometers in length and use power sources we cannot identify." The Karathi elder stood up so quickly that her chair fell over. "Show me," the hologram. Change to show telescope images of the outer solar system. Around Jupiter, massive ring-shaped structures orbited the giant planet. They were clearly artificial, but they did not look like anything in the Council's databases. They were smooth and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. "How long have these been there?" she demanded. "The first structures appeared 47 Earth years ago. They have been growing steadily in size and number. Current count, 43 major construction facilities around Jupiter, 31 around Saturn, and 17 around Uranus." "And you never reported this?" The monitoring protocols classified these as natural phenomena due to their organic appearance. The classification was changed only when human ships were observed docking with the structures. The elder felt her heart's beating faster. In all her years of observing developing species, she had never seen anything like this. Species did not jump from primitive rockets to massive space construction projects in just a few decades. It was impossible. "Show me these human ships." New images appeared. The ships were unlike anything the Council had ever seen from a primitive species. They were huge, some of them several kilometers long, but they moved with impossible grace. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like living tissue, and they left no exhaust trails or energy signatures that the monitoring equipment could identify. Computer. Estimate the human ship's technology level. Unable to classify. Power sources unknown. Propulsion methods unknown. Hull materials unknown. The ships appear to be using principles of physics not currently understood by Galactic Council science. The Karathi elder sank back into her chair. This was impossible. Species did not make leaps like this. Technology developed gradually, over thousands of years. The humans had gone from barely reaching their moon to building ships that confused Council scientists. Something was very wrong. Show me Earth surface activity for the past 10 years. The images that appeared were even more confusing. Human cities were still there, still full of people going about their daily lives. But there were strange new buildings, tall towers that seemed to be made of crystallized air, transportation tubes that carried people at impossible speeds, and parks where the plants grew in perfect geometric patterns. More disturbing were the empty spaces. Entire cities that had been abandoned, but not destroyed. The buildings were still there, perfectly preserved, but with no people. It was as if humans were carefully packing up and leaving, taking everything valuable with them. Computer, show me human population movement patterns. A world map appeared, covered with flowing lines of color. The lines showed massive migrations, millions of humans moving from inland cities toward coastal areas and spaceports. But these were not refugee movements fleeing disaster. They were organized, systematic, planned. Population analysis indicates that approximately 30% of humans have permanently relocated to off-world facilities over the past 20 years. Migration continues at a steady rate of approximately 2 million individuals per Earth month. The elder stared at the data in shock. Humans were leaving Earth, not exploring. Not colonizing new worlds while keeping Earth as their home base, but actually evacuating their entire species. And they were doing it quietly, without any of the panic or chaos that usually mark such massive population movements. Where are they going? She whispered, unknown. Human ships depart the solar system regularly, but their destinations cannot be tracked. They appear to be using some form of faster-than-light travel that does not match any known technology. The elder's mind raced. She needed to report this to the Council immediately. But first, she needed more information. If humans had somehow developed advanced technology in secret, the Council needed to know how and why. Computer, analyze human cultural transmissions for the past 50 years. Look for any references to advanced technology, contact with other species, or major scientific breakthroughs. Analysis complete. Human cultural transmissions show no direct references to advanced technology development. However, there has been a significant change in human philosophical and artistic expression over the past 30 years. What kind of change? Human art, literature, and philosophy has shifted toward themes of unity, growth, and transcendence. Previous human culture emphasized individual achievement and competition. Current human culture emphasizes collective wisdom and shared responsibility, the elder frowned. Cultural changes usually took centuries, not decades, for an entire species. To shift their basic worldview so quickly was almost unheard of. Show me examples. Fragments of human music, art, and writing appeared in the hologram. The elder could not understand the human languages, but the emotional content was clear. The newer human creations carried a sense of hope and purpose that was completely different from the older work she had seen decades ago. There is something else, the computer said. Human technological development appears to be following a completely different path than any previously observed species. Explain. Most species develop technology to dominate their environment and compete with other species. Human technology appears focused on harmony with natural systems and cooperation with other life forms. Their ships, for example, appear to be partially biological. Their cities use living materials that grow and adapt rather than static construction. The Karathi elder sat in silence for a long time, staring at the data. Everything about human development was wrong according to Council understanding. Species that were violent and destructive did not suddenly become peaceful and wise. Primitive civilizations did not develop impossible technology in a few decades. And dying worlds did not become quieter because their people were transcending to something. The emergency council meeting was called within hours of receiving the Karathi elders' report. Representatives from every major civilization rushed to the central station, their ships appearing in flashes of light as they jumped through space, using their most advanced technology. The great hall buzzed with worried conversations in dozens of languages. The Zephyrian High Chancellor floated at the head of the table, her crystal body pulsing with rapid patterns of nervous light. Beside her, the Karathi Supreme Admiral's purple skin showed dark red streaks of anger and confusion. The Veilter entities flickered more rapidly than usual, their energy forms crackling with uncontrolled power. "Show us the data," demanded the Zephyrian Chancellor. The holographic display filled the center of the hall with images of human ships and space stations. Council members leaned forward, studying the impossible designs with growing amazement and fear. "These cannot be human constructions," said a Karathi military expert. "The power requirements alone would need technology we do not possess. And, look at those hull materials. They appear to be self-repairing and adaptive." A Veilter entity pulsed with deep blue light, sending a message directly into everyone's minds. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They are not using fusion, antimatter, or even zero-point energy. Whatever powers these ships exists beyond our current understanding of physics." The Admiral stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "This is impossible. 200 years ago, these humans could barely leave their own atmosphere. They were fighting with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They were poisoning their own planet and killing each other over pieces of land. How could they develop such technology without us noticing?" The Karathi elder who had discovered the changes stepped forward. "Sir, I believe we may have underestimated their development because we were looking for the wrong signs. We expected them to follow the same technological path as other species, weapons first, then space travel, then eventually wisdom. But the humans appear to have skipped the weapons stage entirely." "Skip the weapons stage?" The Admiral's patterns flashed bright orange with disbelief. "Every species develops weapons technology first. It is the natural order. Survival requires the ability to fight enemies and protect resources." "That is what we always believed," the elder replied carefully. "But look at the evidence. Human ships show no weapon systems that we can detect. Their space stations have no defensive capabilities. Their technology seems focused entirely on creation and preservation, not destruction." A young Zephyrian scientist raised her hand timidly. "If I may speak, Chancellor? I have been studying the human cultural transmissions from their evacuation period. Their art and literature show a fundamental shift in thinking that began approximately 50 Earth years ago." "Explain," ordered the Chancellor. The scientist's body glowed with soft yellow light as she spoke. "Early human culture was based on competition and conflict, as we observed. But something changed. Their stories began to focus on cooperation and shared growth. Their music became more harmonious. Their visual art shifted from individual expression to collective creation. It was as if their entire species decided to become something different." "Species do not simply decide to change their fundamental nature," scoffed the Admiral. "Evolution takes millions of years. Cultural development takes thousands of years. You cannot transform an entire civilization in a few decades." "And yet," said the Veilter entity, its light pulsing with ancient sadness, "the evidence suggests that is exactly what happened." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Council's Deep Space Monitoring Network. A technician's hologram appeared in the hall, his face pale with excitement and fear. "Council members, we are receiving reports of anomalous activity throughout the galaxy. Ships matching the human design patterns have been spotted in over 40 different star systems. The hall fell silent. The admiral was the first to speak. 40 systems? How's that possible? We have been monitoring human space travel for centuries. They never left their own solar system until recently. Sir, these ships appear and disappear without warning. They are not using any known form of faster-than-light travel. They simply exist in one location, then exist in another location with no transition period. The Zephyrian Chancellor's light patterns showed deep concern. What are these ships doing? That is the strange part, ma'am. They appear to be providing assistance to struggling civilizations. The Kelani system was suffering from a plague that was killing their entire species. A human ship appeared, delivered medical supplies and treatment instructions, then disappeared. The plague was cured within days. Medical supplies? The admiral looked confused. What kind of medical supplies could cure an alien plague? According to the Kelani reports, the supplies were not traditional medicine. They were some kind of bio-adaptive nanomachines that could analyze any biological system and provide exactly what was needed to restore health. More reports began flowing in from across the galaxy. Human ships appearing at dying worlds and somehow restoring their ecosystems. Failing space colonies receiving shipments of advanced life support systems. Primitive species finding caches of knowledge that helped them solve their greatest problems. But what disturbed the Council most was how the humans knew where help was needed. They appeared at crisis points before anyone had sent distress calls. They seemed to understand problems that even the local populations had not yet recognized. It is as if they can see the future, whispered a Zephyrian observer. Or as if they understand systems on a level we cannot comprehend, added a Karathi analyst. The Veilter entity pulsed with purple light, carrying a feeling of deep unease. We have encountered something like this before, but only in theoretical discussions. There are legends among the oldest races of beings who transcended normal existence, while maintaining their connection to physical reality. Legends, snorted the admiral. We need facts, not ancient stories. The legends speak of species who learn to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, the entity continued. They could see all possible futures and chose actions that led to the best outcomes for all life. They became gardeners of reality itself. That is impossible, said the Chancellor. No species has ever achieved such transcendence without losing their individual identity. Those who become energy beings, like your own people, abandon their physical forms entirely. Those who achieve dimensional consciousness lose all connection to material reality. Yet the humans appear to have done both. The entity replied, They have transcended normal limitations while remaining recognizably human. They have become something entirely new. The reports continued throughout the day. Human ships appeared wherever they were needed most, provided exactly the right help, then vanished. They never asked for payment or recognition. They never tried to establish contact with local governments. They simply helped and left. Most disturbing of all was a report from the Outer Rim territories. A Korathi patrol ship had encountered a human vessel near a collapsing star system. When they tried to make contact, the human ship responded in perfect Korathi language, using cultural references and diplomatic protocols that should have taken years to learn. Your species has always valued honor above all else, the human message had said. We respect that choice, even though it led you to ignore those who needed help. The miners on the third planet will find the equipment they need to escape before their sun dies. Consider it a gift from those who remember that strength without compassion is merely another form of weakness. The patrol ship had checked the third planet and found exactly what the message described: a group of illegal miners who had been trapped by solar flares. Advanced escape pods had been waiting for them, along with detailed instructions on how to reach safety. The miners had never sent a distress call. No one else in the galaxy had known they existed. They knew about miners that our own people had overlooked, the Admiral said quietly. How could they know about a handful of criminals on a forgotten planet when we did not? Because they are watching everything, replied the Veilter entity. They have become observers of existence itself. They see not just what is, but what could be and what should be. As the day continued, the council realized the scope of what humanity had become. They were not just technologically advanced. They had fundamentally altered their relationship with the universe. They existed on levels that the council could not even imagine, yet they still cared about individual lives and small problems. "We need to make contact," the chancellor finally declared. "We need to understand what they have become and what they want." "What if they do not wish to speak with us?" asked the admiral. "What if they see us as irrelevant?" The Veilter entity's light dimmed to a sad gray color. "Then we will have learned the most painful lesson of all, that by choosing to ignore their growth, we have made ourselves unworthy of their attention." The council voted to send a formal diplomatic mission to make contact with humanity. But, as they prepared their messages and chose their representatives, each member secretly wondered the same thing. Would beings who had transcended normal existence even remember the species who had watched them struggle and chosen to turn away? The Veilter Elder, known as Luminar, was the oldest consciousness in the galaxy. She had existed as pure energy for over 10 million years, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on an endless shore. She had seen species destroy themselves with war, poison themselves with greed, and fade away from simple despair. She had also seen the rare few who learned to transcend their limitations and become something greater, but she had never seen anything like humanity. Luminar floated in the deepest meditation chamber of the council station, her energy form spread across multiple dimensions as she tried to understand what the humans had become. Other Veilter entities joined her, their combined consciousness reaching out across the galaxy to touch the edges of human activity. What they found changed everything. "Impossible," whispered one of the younger entities, her light flickering with shock. "They exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously while maintaining individual consciousness. That should destroy any physical being instantly." "Look deeper," Luminar commanded, her ancient mind probing the strange reality that surrounded every human ship and settlement. "They have not simply transcended physical limitations. They have rewritten the rules of existence itself." The Veilter had achieved their energy state by abandoning their physical bodies millions of years ago. It had been a painful process that took thousands of years and required them to give up most of their emotional connections to the material world. They had gained immortality and incredible power, but they had lost the ability to truly care about individual lives and small problems. Humans had somehow done the opposite. They had gained all the benefits of transcendence while becoming more human, not less. "How is this possible?" asked another entity. "Physical beings cannot maintain consciousness across multiple dimensions. The energy requirements alone would tear apart any biological structure." Luminar studied the patterns of human existence more carefully. What she found was beautiful and terrifying. They did not transcend by abandoning their physical nature. They transcended by perfecting it. Look at their ships, their bodies, their technology. Everything is both physical and energy, both individual and collective, both finite and infinite. The younger entities gathered closer, their combined attention focused on a single human ship that was helping to repair a damaged planet in the Cygnus sector. The ship itself was alive, its hull breathing and growing as it worked. Inside they could sense the presence of thousands of humans, but each human was also somehow present in every other human ship across the galaxy. They share consciousness while maintaining individuality, Luminar realized with growing amazement. Every human experiences their own life, but they also carry the wisdom and memory of their entire species. When one human learns something, all humans know it. When one human feels joy, all humans share that joy. "But that should create chaos," protested a younger entity. "Individual minds cannot handle the experiences of billions of others. They would lose themselves in the noise." "They found a way," Luminar replied softly. "They learned to be both one and many at the same time. Each human is a complete individual, but also a part of something infinitely larger. They achieved unity." without losing diversity. The Veilter entities fell silent as they began to understand the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. Every species in the galaxy, including the Veilter themselves, had been forced to choose between individual consciousness and collective transcendence. Humans had somehow achieved both. There is more, Luminar continued, her investigation deepening. They exist across time as well as space. Each human ship exists in the present moment, but it also exists in all possible futures simultaneously. They can see every choice that could be made and select the path that leads to the best outcome for all life. That explains how they know where help is needed before anyone asks for it, realized one of the entities. They can see problems developing across multiple timelines and intervene at exactly the right moment. But why? Asked another entity. Why do they help other species at all? They have transcended normal existence. They could ignore the rest of the galaxy and focus on their own development. That is what every other advanced species has done. Luminar spent long moments studying this question, her consciousness touching the emotional patterns that flowed through human activity like invisible rivers. What she found brought a feeling she had not experienced in millions of years: shame. They help because they remember what it felt like to be ignored when they needed help, she said finally. They remember reaching out to the galaxy for guidance and finding only silence. They remember being dismissed as primitive and unworthy of attention, and they chose to ensure that no other species would ever feel that abandonment. The younger entities recoiled in shock. They remember the Council's decision not to help them. They remember everything. Every council meeting where their extinction was predicted. Every report that dismissed them as another failed species. Every moment when we could have offered guidance and chose not to. They carry those memories not as wounds, but as lessons about who they never want to become. The meditation chamber filled with a heavy silence. The Veilter had always believed that their transcendence made them superior to physical beings. They had thought that abandoning emotion and individual connection was the price of wisdom. But humans had proven them wrong. They had achieved greater transcendence while becoming more caring, not less. We must tell the Council, said one of the younger entities. They need to understand what humanity has become. They need to understand what we failed to become. Luminar corrected sadly. The emergency council session that followed was unlike any in galactic history. Luminar materialized in the Great Hall, her ancient energy form crackling with power that made the air itself seem to sing. Council members, who had thought themselves the most advanced beings in the universe, suddenly felt like children in the presence of a teacher. You asked me to investigate what humanity has become, Luminar began, her voice carrying harmonics that touched every mind present. I have done so. What I found will change how we understand consciousness, transcendence, and the nature of wisdom itself. She shared her discoveries with the Council, her words painting pictures in their minds of what humans had achieved. As the full scope of human transcendence became clear, the Great Hall fell into stunned silence. The Zephyrian Chancellor was the first to speak, her crystal body dim with shock. You are saying that humans have achieved something beyond what any of us thought possible? I am saying that humans have achieved something we were too proud to attempt, Luminar replied. We believed that transcendence required abandoning physical existence and individual emotion. We thought that wisdom meant caring less about small problems and individual lives. Humans proved that true transcendence means caring more, not less. The Karathi Admiral's patterns showed deep confusion. But how? How did a species we dismissed as primitive achieve something that we, with all our advancement, never attempted? Because they were never trying to become superior to other life, Luminar explained. They were trying to become worthy of it. When they achieved advanced technology, they used it to help others. When they gained power, they used it to protect the weak. When they transcended normal existence, they became gardeners of life itself. And we became observers of death, added a younger Veilter entity who had joined the session. We watch. Species destroy themselves and call it natural selection. Humans watch species struggle and call it an opportunity to help. The council members began to understand the full magnitude of their failure. They had achieved great technology and long lives, but they had used their advancement to separate themselves from the rest of life. Humans had achieved even greater advancement and used it to connect themselves more deeply to all existence. What do they want from us? Asked the Chancellor quietly. Luminar's energy form shifted to show patterns of sadness and hope mixed together. They want nothing from us. They want everything for us. They have become what we could have been if we had chosen compassion over superiority, growth over stagnation, connection over isolation. But surely they must harbor resentment, insisted the Admiral. We abandoned them when they needed guidance. We predicted their extinction and did nothing to prevent it. They must want revenge. They want understanding, Luminar replied. They want us to learn what they learned, that strength without kindness is not strength at all, that wisdom without love is not wisdom, that transcendence without connection is just another form of death. The session continued for hours as the Council struggled to grasp what humanity had become and what it meant for their own civilizations. By the end, one truth had become clear. Humanity had not just surpassed them technologically. They had surpassed them morally, spiritually, and in every way that truly mattered. The Watchers had become the watched. The teachers had become the students. And the species they had dismissed as doomed had become the salvation they had never known they needed. The message from humanity came exactly 100 days after the Council's emergency session. It appeared simultaneously on every communication device across the galaxy, written in perfect translations for each species. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made even the oldest beings pause in their daily activities. To the Galactic Council and all who watch the stars, we know you have been seeking to understand what we have become. We invite you to meet with us at the place of your choosing, at the time of your choosing. We have much to discuss. The message was signed with a single symbol, a circle containing what looked like a tree, its roots and branches intertwined to form an endless loop. The Council spent 3 days debating where to hold the meeting. Some suggested neutral space, far from any inhabited systems. Others wanted to meet at the Council's main station, surrounded by their most powerful defenses. But the Veilter Elder Luminar had a different suggestion. Let them choose the place, she said. If we are to learn from them, we must first show that we trust them enough to meet on their terms. And so the Council sent their reply. Choose the meeting place. We will come. The human response arrived within minutes. We will meet at the edge of your galaxy, in the space between what was and what could be. A station will be prepared for your comfort. 3 days later, the Council's delegation arrived at the specified coordinates and found something that defied their understanding of physics and architecture. The station that hung in the darkness between galaxies was not built from metal or crystal or energy. It was grown from something that looked like crystallized light, its walls flowing and shifting like water that had learned to hold its shape. The station was beautiful beyond description. Gardens grew in impossible spirals throughout its corridors, their plants breathing out air that smelled like every homeworld the Council members had ever known. The gravity adjusted itself perfectly for each visitor's comfort. The light was exactly the right color and intensity for each species' eyes, but what struck the Council members most was the sense of peace that filled every space. For the first time in centuries, the Korathi Admiral felt his anger fade away. The Zephyrian Chancellor's constant worry dissolved like morning frost. Even the ancient Veilter found their energy forms settling into patterns of calm they had not experienced since their earliest days of existence. They were led to a circular chamber at the heart of the station. The walls showed views of space, but not the empty darkness they expected. Instead, they saw stars being born, planets learning to support life, and countless species taking their first steps toward consciousness. It was as if the room was showing them the universe as it could be, rather than as it was. At the center of the chamber stood a single human. She appeared to be an ordinary woman, perhaps middle-aged by human standards, with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. She wore simple clothes that seemed to be made of the same flowing material as the station itself. Nothing about her appearance suggested the incredible power and wisdom that the council now knew humans possessed, but when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that touched something deep in every listener's mind. It was the voice of someone who had seen the birth and death of galaxies, but still remembered what it felt like to be small and afraid. "Welcome," she said, gesturing for them to sit in chairs that formed themselves from the floor. "I am Elena." Vasquez, though individual names matter less now than they once did. "I speak for humanity, but I also am humanity, as each of us is and yet remains uniquely ourselves." The Korathi admiral was the first to find his voice. "We demand to know how you achieve this impossible transcendence. Our scientists say what you have become violates every known law of physics and consciousness." Elena smiled, and the expression carried such genuine warmth that the admiral felt his automatic hostility crumble. "You're thinking of transcendence? As something to be achieved through force or cleverness. We learned that true transcendence comes from acceptance and connection. We did not break the laws of physics. We learned to live in harmony with laws we had not yet discovered." "But how?" pressed the Zephyrian chancellor. "How did you go from primitive tool users to beings who exist across multiple dimensions in just a few centuries?" "We made a choice," Elena replied simply. "When we looked at the galaxy and saw so much suffering, so much loneliness, so many species struggling with problems they could not solve alone, we chose to become the help we had wished for but never received." The chamber fell silent, the council. Members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, understanding the gentle accusation in her words. "You are angry with us," said the chancellor finally. "We abandoned you when you needed guidance. We predicted your extinction and did nothing to prevent it." Elena's expression remained kind, but something deeper flickered in her eyes. "We are not angry. Anger would serve no purpose now. But we are disappointed. You had so much wisdom, so much power, so much opportunity to make the galaxy a better place for all life. Instead, you chose to use your gifts to separate yourselves from those who needed help." "We followed the natural order," protested the admiral. "Species must earn their survival through strength and wisdom. That is how evolution works." "Evolution?" Elena repeated softly. "Yes, we learned much about evolution. Not just biological evolution, but the evolution of consciousness, of morality, of purpose. And we discovered something your science never taught you. Evolution's highest goal is not the survival of the fittest, but the care of all life." She gestured, and the walls of the chamber changed to show images from across the galaxy. Species that had been saved from extinction by human intervention. Worlds that had been healed from environmental collapse. Civilizations that had found peace after centuries of war. Every species you dismissed as doomed, every world you wrote off as beyond saving. Every civilization you ignored because they had nothing to offer you. They are all thriving now. Not because we gave them advanced technology, but because we gave them something far more powerful." "What?" whispered the chancellor. "Hope, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, cared about their survival and their growth. The understanding that they were not alone in an uncaring universe." The Veilter Elder Luminar pulsed with deep blue light. "You are saying that care itself is a force that can change reality?" "We are saying that care is the fundamental force of reality," Elena replied. "Matter and energy follow the laws of physics, but consciousness follows the laws of connection. When beings truly care for each other, when they are willing to sacrifice for the growth and happiness of others, they create possibilities that did not exist before." The admiral leaned forward, his patterns showing confusion and growing understanding. "But why help us now? We failed you. We chose isolation over connection, superiority over service. Why offer us guidance when we offered you none?" Elena's smile carried a sadness that seemed to encompass all the loneliness and abandonment that every species had ever felt, because that is what transcendence means. It means becoming someone who helps even those who refuse to help others. It means choosing to be better than the treatment you received. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber, her simple presence somehow filling the entire space with warmth and possibility. We could have sought revenge, she continued. We could have used our power to punish those who ignored our struggles. We could have become conquerors, forcing our vision of peace on an unwilling galaxy. But that would have made us exactly what you are, beings who use their strength to impose their will on others. Instead, we chose to become gardeners. We plant seeds of kindness and watch them grow. We heal what is broken and protect what is vulnerable. We create possibilities for growth and then step back to let others choose their own paths. The council members sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their failure. They had been given the same choices as humanity to use their advancement for domination or for service, for separation or for connection. They had chosen wrong, and now they were seeing what they could have become. "What do you want from us?" asked the Chancellor, her voice barely a whisper. Elena turned back to them, her eyes holding infinite compassion and infinite sadness. "We want you to choose again. Your civilizations are stagnating not because you lack technology, but because you lack purpose. You have forgotten that true strength comes not from standing above others, but from lifting others up. We will not force you to change. We will not punish you for your past choices. But we will be here, waiting, ready to help you learn what we learned, that the universe is not a competition to be won, but a garden to be tended." She moved toward the chamber's exit, then paused. "When you are ready to become gardeners instead of watchers, when you are ready to serve instead of rule, when you are ready to connect instead of separate, we will be waiting. And we will help you become what you were always meant to be." As Elena left the chamber, the council members remained in their seats, staring at the walls that now showed images of the galaxy as it could be, filled with thriving life, connected civilizations, and species working together to create something greater than any of them could achieve alone. For the first time in their long existence, they understood what they had